Hello and welcome back. I'm Barbara O'Neill, and today we are diving into reversing type 2 diabetes. Research shows that diabetes affects nearly 38.4 million people in the United States, or 11.6% of the population. But did you know that it's possible to not only manage but actually reverse type 2 diabetes with the right lifestyle changes? So stay tuned as we explore practical steps and strategies to take control of your health, reduce your blood sugar levels, and work towards reversing type 2 diabetes.
Hippocrates, the father of medicine, 400 years BC, no mention of diabetes in his writings. So diabetes is a fairly modern disease. Diabetes is a lifestyle disease. Newton's third law of motion states that to every action there's an equal and an opposite reaction. Why isn't the pancreas working? That's what we should be asking. As Proverbs 26 verse 2 states, the curse causeless shall not come. There is a reason. There is a reason why pancreases are not working. Now the pancreas's, one of its main roles is to release two hormones. One is insulin, that gets the blood sugar down. The other hormone is glucagon, and that gets the blood sugar level up. Now the meal that you had tonight, because it's high in fibre, I think everything had fibre, generous proteins, there's your legumes and some great fats, it gives a slow, sure, steady release of glucose, of nutrients. And that allows the pancreas to just release the insulin as it's needed. That's what every cell in the body wants, and that's what our pancreas wants. But what's happening today is people predominantly are eating a high carbohydrate diet. And this high carbohydrate diet releases a lot of glucose. And that glucose, when it gets into the blood, especially the refined sugar, and by the way, the refined grains, it's almost as high as sugar. But there is one grain that gets the blood sugar levels higher than refined sugar. Is that a surprise? And the grain that does that is what? Bread and cereal and pasta and cakes, etc., and pizza are all made out of predominantly one grain. What's that one grain? It's wheat.
When we consume wheat, it breaks down into glucose quickly, causing a spike in blood sugar levels. This sudden increase demands a significant amount of insulin from the pancreas. Over time, this constant demand can exhaust the pancreas, leading to insulin resistance and eventually diabetes.
You see, all of these foods break down in the gastrointestinal tract to a singular molecular structure called glucose. And glucose is then absorbed into the blood, and then it becomes part of the body, because the blood is the life of the flesh. Now the blood takes that glucose on the M1 main highway, portal vein, straight to the project manager. That's the liver. Now the liver, as the project manager, is orchestrating what happens to everything that comes into the body. And so the liver, first of all, sends the glucose to the cell. So let's have a look at what happens inside the cell. So the glucose comes inside the cell under the action of insulin. Insulin's basically the key that unlocks the door to get the glucose inside the cell. And then it goes through a 20-step pathway. And that 20-step pathway gives us 2 units of energy. Isn't that why we eat? To get energy, so our eyes see, so our ears hear, so our brain works, so our heart beats, so every single cell in the body is running because of the glucose. At the end result of this 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. Pyruvate is the chemical form of glucose that gets fed into what's often called the powerhouse. Called the powerhouse because this 8-step pathway gives us a whopping 36 units of energy. Wow, what a difference. Now that pathway there is an oxygen pathway. It uses oxygen. This pathway uses no oxygen. What a difference oxygen makes. By the way, just a little sideline here. How are you going to feel if every single one of your 100 trillion cells has enough oxygen to get to that 8-step pathway? How are you going to feel? We're not going to be able to hold you down. How many people today do you know, when you say, how do you feel, say, oh, all right, not too bad. What's not too bad? Not too good. You know how it is, getting there. How many people, when you say, how are you, say, fantastic? You'd almost say, oh, what's wrong with them? Oxygen is a very powerful thing, it's oxygen. I have to hold myself back here because we're not talking about oxygen right now, we're talking about glucose. But the oxygen explains why so much more energy. So that's the first place that the liver will send the glucose is down the pathway to give us energy. So number one, that is where the glucose goes to the cell. But only so much glucose can be fed through the pathway. And so now the liver causes some to be stored in the muscle cell particularly, like a little bunch of grapes, but they're little molecules of glucose, and they're called glycogen. So glycogen is your quick release glucose store. So yesterday I had a light soup at about 4:30, I think. Then I worked hard yesterday evening, lecturing to you. I got to bed about 10. I think I was in bed by 10. Slept in a little bit. My habit is I wake at 5, but 5 here at the moment is... Well, yes. 3 a.m, yes, so it was a bit hard to wake up here. So I usually walk at 6 and eat at 7. This morning I walked at 7 and ate a little bit later. And Amelia and I, we found hills where we were, and we did our high intensity running up the hills and recovery down the hills. Where did I get the energy? I hadn't had breakfast yet. I only ate lightly. Early yesterday. It's my glycogen stores. They're quick release glucose stores. They're just sitting in the muscle cell waiting to be called on. It's not a good time to exercise after you've eaten because where's all your body's energy going? Digestion. One lady said, well, how am I going to have the energy to walk? I said, it's your glycogen stores. It is the diabetic's best kept secret. All you need to do is something to access that, and 2 things access it. Demand, which is exercise, and the other is water. Very important to be well hydrated. It helps your body access that.
Being well hydrated helps your body access those glycogen stores effectively. Water plays a crucial role in ensuring that glucose is transported efficiently to your cells. When you exercise, your body uses the glycogen stored in your muscles for quick energy. This is why staying hydrated is essential, as it supports optimal performance and energy release. Many people are unaware that their energy levels are tied closely to their hydration status and the availability of glycogen. Regular exercise helps to deplete glycogen stores, prompting your body to replenish them, which in turn maintains your energy levels and overall metabolic health.
Another contributing factor is dairy. And in the book, The China Study, Dr. Colin Campbell, he explains this one. When a human takes dairy, in the majority of cases, it's difficult to break down because we haven't got the 5 stomachs. And so molecules come into the blood that aren't properly broken down, and the body creates antigens to deal with them. Now, their molecular structure is very similar to the molecular structure of the beta cells in the pancreas. And so these pathogens, they're wiping out these molecules from the partially broken down milk, and then they look over at the pancreas and start to break down the beta cells in the pancreas. I hope I didn't lose you with that one. And so dairy is a big contributing factor. Colin Campbell states that children that have cow's milk in the first year of life have a 70% greater risk of developing type 1 diabetes. And yet what would most children have for breakfast? Cereal, milk and sugar. That's what I had as a child, yeah? So that's another causative factor. Number 3 is drugs. Many drugs have as their side effect an effect on the beta cells in the pancreas to break them down. There is much research today, and I know a Dr. Glassons from America, he pioneered a lot of this research in about the 80s, that the polio vaccine was causing the type 1 diabetes. That's quite alarming, isn't it? Do you know the health department have put a statement out in the last few days that the only cases of polio around today are from the polio vaccine. Polio was wiped out before vaccines came in. Quite alarming, isn't it? The human body was designed to heal itself, and it'll heal itself if you give it the right conditions. And I had a lady ring me up with a 16-month-old child with diabetes, and she said it developed after her vaccinations. Now, there are children that are vaccinated that don't have diabetes. It's like this really. It's the best way to explain it. A whole lot of little threads come together to make a strong rope, and a strong man cannot break that rope. But a little mouse that strong man could step on and squash can start eating at all those little threads. And the rope that the strong man could not break, that little mouse successfully does by nibbling at those threads. We are a combination of a whole lot of bits and pieces, aren't we? And that's why I believe we should be the doctor. Where to put the detective hat on and thread all of those threads. Another cause of diabetes is the bleach that they bleach flour with. Now flour, or wheat flour, or even spelt flour, kamut flour, if the bran and the wheat germ are taken out, it's almost the colour of the inside of my skin there, like a light beige colour. And so they wanted the wheat or the flour white. So they bleach it with a bleach called alloxin. And alloxin, the research is showing now, kills the beta cells in the pancreas. So another reason why this wheat is contributing to it. And so, number 1 to get a turnaround with diabetes is the wheat and the sugar must stop, the dairy must stop, and ideally the drugs stop.
These factors play a significant role in managing and potentially reversing diabetes. It's crucial to understand how each element, dairy, drugs, and bleached flour, affects the body's insulin production and pancreatic health. By removing these triggers, individuals can create a healthier internal environment conducive to healing and stabilizing blood sugar levels. Awareness of these dietary and environmental influences is key to empowering individuals to take proactive steps towards managing their health and mitigating the risks associated with diabetes.
So to conquer diabetes, what do? To conquer diabetes, go for the low glycemic index foods. It's not easy. It's easy. I meant to say it's not hard to get a glycemic index. You can Google that. It's a matter of having berries for breakfast instead of banana. It's as simple as having sweet potato instead of potato. Having your whole grains, eliminating the wheat. Low GI foods. Number 2, daily legumes. I met a man, he was a scientist, he was 69, He came to our retreat. He said, when I was 42, I was told I had pre-diabetes and to eat legumes every day. He said, I eat legumes every day and I never got diabetes. Because the beans give that lovely, sure, steady delivery of fuel. But how do we stop them causing bloating or wind? You soak them overnight. And then you rinse them very well. And then you bring them to the boil. Have you seen all the froth that comes on? You know what that is? Wind. You got to rinse it away. What I do is when my beans are 3/4 cooked, I rinse them again. And then I put my beans into a delicious sauce. And then you will not have that problem. They'll be a lot easier to digest. When I first married my husband 24 years ago, he could handle lima beans, he could handle red lentils, he could not handle brown lentils, and he could not handle kidney beans. So what I did is at the meal I'd give him a teaspoon. That didn't cause a problem. A few days later, 2 teaspoons. Within a couple of weeks, 3 teaspoons. He can now handle them all. So sometimes if there are some you can't handle and they're even well soaked and rinsed, just start slowly and introduce yourself to them. As we looked at when we looked at the liver, the legumes are only 1/3 the carbohydrate that you will find in your grains. Number 3, there are some things that must stop. What must stop is wheat. What must stop is refined sugar. Now, if someone's looking at conquering diabetes, initially they also need to eliminate all your healthy sugars, like your palm sugar, your maple syrup and honey. So they need to be stopped until the pancreas is starting to recover. And it can recover. One young man named Dan did our program. He was type 1 diabetes. He got diabetes after a strong course of antibiotics at the age of 15. He's now 19. He said, my specialist said my pancreas is dead. I said, is it gangrene? What's dead? I said, if there is blood going through your pancreas, it's not dead. The life of the flesh is in the blood. So he began to do this. Another thing is no wheat, no caffeine, and no refined sugar and no caffeine. Caffeine can actually get an insulin response, so that has to be stopped. When he came to our retreat, he ate only low glycemic foods. He had legumes every meal. He started to drink more water, hydration. And what he found was if he felt that he was getting a blood sugar level low between meals, he'd have a little bit of the salt and a glass of water and it would maintain him. I do not advise diabetics eat every 2 hours because that really disrupts digestion. When we looked at the journey through the gut, did you notice that digestion averages 3.5 to 4 hours? So you've got to leave that break between meals. If you eat food, and this is what Dan did, and we just looked at this, high fibre. Remember what fibre does? It slowly releases the glucose. Generous proteins, there's your legumes, nuts and seeds. They're all low carbohydrates, so you're not overworking the pancreas. And also the healthy fats. We also looked earlier in the week at fats that heal, fats that kill. And the killer fats are your altered fats. There's your deep fried foods, there's your margarines, those fats that have been changed or altered, or your polyunsaturated fats that have been extracted using high heat. They're the dangerous fats.
These are the fats that we really need to stop. You need to have the healing fats, the fats that God made, the natural fats. We've got to get them back into our diet. Your olive oil, your coconut oil, your real butter, your cream, your lard, they are the ones that you should be using. Now, if someone says to me, I'm not having any fat, they're doing the wrong thing. Their brains are mostly fat. You've got to have that fat for your brain. The essential fatty acids are the good ones. The omega-3s, they come from the fish oil, and the omega-6, they come from the seeds, the nuts, and the grains.
Another very important point of conquering diabetes, conquering weight, is exercise. And there is a type of exercise that gets the body up onto a more effective and better rate of running. There is a type of exercise that will stimulate the development of more insulin receptor sites. In a matter of days, you can conquer insulin resistance. Isn't that good news? If you implement the things I'm putting down here. Exercise. What is this interval training? Interval training, as the name implies, are intervals of high intensity and periods of recovery for a cycle. So a lot of the research with this has been done on exercise bikes, because I can testify it's not easy to run for 30 seconds. If you think to yourself, she doesn't know what she's talking about, I want you to try it tomorrow. In fact, at 20 seconds, my body is screaming at me, stop. But the type of exercise that's going to wake up that pancreas, the type of exercise that is going to wake up the insulin receptor sites on the cell and get them moving again, is the type of exercise that's very, very hard work. It's going to get you out of your comfort zone. Now, if you can't run, exercise bike. Can't exercise bike, swim. Can't swim, push-ups. Can't push-ups, push-ups on the wall. Fitboard. You just got to find out what works for you. It may be a good idea to go to a gym and try different pieces of equipment and see what works for you. Then go home, and we have Gumtree or eBay in Australia. You can buy second-hand pieces of equipment. But the exercise bike, most people find, is the easiest way to do this high intensity. If you can't do 30 seconds high intensity, start with 10 or start with 15. But remember, don't stop when your body tells you to. You push yourself a little bit more. It's that pushing of yourself that strengthens that heart, and I'll talk about it in detail again tomorrow night. But it's that pushing of yourself that's going to waken up the insulin receptor sites on the cell, and he's going to wake up that pancreas. Now, Dan told me that his doctor told him his pancreas was dead. 20. I said, is it gangrene? What's dead? If there's blood and if there's lymph going through that pancreas, there's life, and there is the ability to revive. The fact that he dropped his insulin by 90% by the 3rd week is an indication of what's starting to work. The pancreas. He adjusted it according to his blood sugar levels. They kept going lower and lower, so he'd go less, less, and that's how you do it. 30 seconds high intensity, 90 seconds recovery for about a cycle of 6. If at first you can't do a cycle of 6, do a cycle of 3. You just got to start with where you're at. Dr. Al says in his book PACE, his PACE means progressive acceleration of cardiopulmonary exertion. You don't have to repeat that back to me. Progressive, that means what you can't do now, you'll be able to do in a few days. Have you done the maths on that? Impressive, isn't it? What's this, 10 minutes a day? I'm a busy lady. I love it. I used to do 2K half-hour walk. Now I do 15 minutes. That's all I do. But I incorporate the high intensity. You got to work and work hard. And when Dan came back from his morning walk, his clothes were wet, and he was like this. This is working hard. What sort of effort do you think the Olympian athletes put into their training? They put everything into it. Now, we're training for something more important than the Olympic Games, you know that. We're training for life. We're training for quality of life. And what you do to your body now will determine how you spend those latter years.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope you found this information helpful and empowering. Remember, reversing diabetes is possible with the right steps and mindset. If you have any questions or need support, feel free to leave a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on more health tips and strategies. Together, we can take control of our health and live vibrant, fulfilling lives. See you next time.